So if you could take your seats, it'd be great to get this morning started. Dan Bartholomew told me last night, we start Railvolution on time. So, okay, we're a little bit late, but what a great evening we had last night at the Mohai. Did everybody get a chance to go? Raise your hand. Did you have a good time last night? Isn't that a great facility? Well, we are very excited that you're here in Seattle for Railvolution. It's been a journey to get here. I'm Joni Earl, the CEO of Sound Transit. Thank you. Thank you. And it's really been my honor to chair the local host committee for this conference. And there's a lot of people to shout out, and we will over the few days, but there's one in particular I really want to recognize, and that is Kathy Albert. Kathy, you're right up there. Raise your hand. Kathy's on the National Steering Committee, but she has been the head honcho to keep us all organized to make this a really, really great event. So on behalf of the local host committee, we welcome you to the incredible Puget Sound region. We understand that the mobile workshops yesterday went pretty darn good, and sorry about the fog, but at least there's no rain, so that's a good thing. So it's my privilege to serve as your master of ceremonies this morning, and we have a great lineup of speakers today, all who I get to work with on a pretty regular basis. Since this conference is all about building livable communities with transit, I wanted to start by giving you just a quick update on something near and dear to my heart, which is the status of our growing component of light rail when it comes to transit here in Seattle area in the Puget Sound region. Then we're going to launch into our program with some great speakers: Seattle Mayor Mike McGinn, King County Executive Dow Constantine, Congressman Earl Blumenauer, and then we'll wrap up with the chair of the Railvolution Board and Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority General Manager Dr. Beverly Scott. So let me just do a little, since I have the microphone, a little kickoff so that you get some grounding about Sound Transit and the regional rail system. So we're a multi-county, multimodal regional transit authority responsible for building, operating, and maintaining 81 miles of commuter rail, over 25 Sound Transit Express bus routes across the 3 regions, and then the light rail system. And hopefully you got a chance to ride light rail in from the airport. For those of you that flew in, we're very proud of that 16-mile system that opened in 2009. So our citizens in this region have approved 2 high-capacity transit initiatives. The first one that really created the agency was Sound Move. That was passed in 1996. And then Sound Transit 2 was passed in 2008. So in 2008, so we opened the 16 miles that you see on that map in 2009 to the airport. And then in 2008, when the voters approved Sound Transit 2, they gave us the authority and the funding to build 36 additional miles of light rail along our region's major job and residential corridors. So I'm just gonna, with my friend Trinity in the back's help, we're gonna just flip through a quick map to get you kind of grounded on what's happening here as you spend the next few days. So we're busy planning, designing, and constructing these segments, and here's how it looks. So in 2016, we will open the University Light Rail Project with 2 stations, one at Capitol Hill and one at the University of Washington's Husky Stadium. Construction on that line, it's a New Starts project, is about 75% complete, trending more than $100 million under budget, and at least 6 months ahead of schedule, and we're looking at trying to work to open that early, but it's scheduled for 2016. Also in 2016, we will expand south of the airport to the Angle Lake area south of SeaTac, about 1.6 miles. Then, in 2021, we will open what we call Northgate Link, which will triple our ridership on the light rail system, and that's an additional 4 miles. Then we really hit the ground with a lot of extensions in 2023. So we will open our Eastlink project, which is 14 miles and 10 stations, which will connect the major job centers in the communities on the east side of Lake Washington, including Mercer Island, downtown Bellevue, and the main Microsoft campus in Redmond. It will also be the first time in the world that light rail has ever been built on a floating bridge. We like to try different things here in the region. Also in 2023, we will move north out of Seattle into Snohomish County up through Shoreline, Montlake Terrace, and Linwood with our Linwood Link project. And simultaneously, we will then be also going south to the Kent Des Moines area, which is south of the Angle Lake area. So we are pretty excited about what this means for our region. Today on our light rail system alone, we carry just over 30,000 daily riders, and our projection is by 2030, we will be carrying about 350,000 daily riders when the system is built out, in addition to all the other transit service we have in the region with our transit partners and our commuter rail system. So, you know, we're here about livable communities, and light rail will be transforming our region. It's already started, and it's creating incredible opportunities for transit-oriented development, density, and to create more livable and sustainable communities. And that's why we're all here this week in the beautiful Puget Sound. So with that introduction to Sound Transit, let me introduce our first speaker. So Seattle Mayor Mike McGinn was elected the 52nd mayor of Seattle in November of 2009, and I can tell you he is a very active member on the Sound Transit Board. I have 18 bosses, and Mayor McGinn is one of them. And he has been very active in politics, law, and environmental advocacy since graduating from Williams College in Massachusetts with a bachelor's degree in economics. The mayor also holds a law degree from the University of Washington Law School. Before being elected mayor, he founded Great City, a Seattle nonprofit that brought together neighbors, environmentalists, and business leaders advocating for smart and responsible urbanism as the solution to many local economic and environmental challenges. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Mike McGinn.
Well, thank you, and welcome everybody to Seattle. I don't know if you're going to get sunshine. We've had this fog over us for a couple of days now, but it's great to have you all here, and we love our city, of course. I have to say we're very fortunate to have Joni Earle as the executive director of Sound Transit. She came in as director at a time when the whole enterprise was under a lot of questions about its ability to complete its projects on time and under budget. The original first expansive plans weren't quite working out, and so there was a very difficult period of readjustment that Sound Transit had to go through to try to fit the program within the scale of the revenue actually available. And now we're in a much better place because we're doing that, and we may be able to do a little more than we hoped because of the effective management of Sound Transit. So this is my first elective office, by the way, and I was one of those people who was out there saying, why can't you guys do things better, right? Why can't we have more rail? Why can't we have more walkable neighborhoods? How about a few more bike lanes and just better places overall? And I came from being an individual who worked in my neighborhood of Greenwood. I was the president of the local community council, and I was very active in the Sierra Club working on statewide and regional issues. In fact, Greenwood used to have a stop on the interurban streetcar line, which is somewhat legendary around here. It ran from Everett to Tacoma, and you can see, and Seattle, of course, had great streetcar lines at one point in its history, and you can see that, and I'm sure you see that in cities around the country, where the neighborhoods were built around streetcar lines. And so Greenwood was the last streetcar suburb of Seattle before you reach now one of the more auto-dominated suburbs heading outwards from there. And well, the other thing that's amazing about my neighborhood of Greenwood and lots of neighborhoods that were built up around those streetcars is the walkable scale, right? Small shops, a street grid, and they did it all without zoning and without anybody who had masters in urban planning. Somehow or another, it just happened, right? And it was beautiful, But like lots of cities, and like the nation itself, we became enamored as a nation with freeways. And the freeways, you know, slice through our city, and many more were going to be built until the residents of the city came up against them. So there were plans, and again, it's probably true in many cities across the nation. You can go back and find the maps for where we're going to send the second freeway through town, and then the third freeway through town, and then we'd connect them all east, all these north-south freeways with east-west links. And the citizens said no at some point. And in fact, South Lake Union, which is a thriving neighborhood, would have had a freeway across it. Pioneer Square, our historic neighborhood, and which is where the railroads first came to Seattle and made Seattle. And please visit, if you haven't, our historic King Street Station. Would have had a highway slicing through it. So, but it's interesting how long something can go up and how long it can take to start going in the opposite direction. And this, in this case, is freeway building. Because there's still, even though in Seattle, a beautiful thing about Seattle, well, you know, to continue the historical narrative, of course, the streetcars were torn up, we put in a bus system, and since then, Seattle's been pining for rail ever since. Now, in the 70s, we had an opportunity to build rail. There was a major bond measure. It was called Forward Thrust. It was a more innocent time. You could name bond measures that. And it had the dollars for essentially a similar system to the one that Joni just showed you. You know, and unfortunately the region voted it down, and Atlanta got the money to build MARTA. We were just playing Atlanta in the last year in a playoff game, and I was tempted. I was trying to figure out what could we bet them to get our rail line back, but I couldn't think of anything that they'd really take. So you know, we couldn't give up the Space Needle. So we said no then, and we've been trying to catch up ever since. And the two ballot measures, each of them were struggles. And I actually have to confess, and I'm not sure I've been fully forgiven by some of the people up here, I was actually part of the struggle, which was Sound Transit 2, when it came around, was linked to a series of highway projects. And I took a no position as a leader in the Sierra Club because I didn't think it was right to hold the rail hostage to all of these major highway projects. And that was because I felt very strongly about climate and that we shouldn't be building these climate-busting highways. And we actually, yeah. And we defeated it. And at the time, people thought the argument against our campaign no was, we'll never get that light rail too. Well, it turned out that they came back, they got it on the ballot alone, and there was huge public demand for rail, and it passed. So I just want to make a couple more observations. One thing is, one is just we can all see the changing demographics in front of us. The other thing that was great about Seattle was, even though we built those freeways, even though we lost the streetcars, even though we lost the opportunity to build rail earlier, we never lost our love for and our support for our walkable neighborhoods. So if you go around our downtown, it had its downturn, but it's really coming back. And big companies now want to be here. Amazon's relocating in the center of the city as opposed to companies choosing green fields outside of the city to locate. So that's a huge demographic shift. People want to be in cities again. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but we see it in our own data here in Seattle. Driving is actually going down, not just per capita, but overall. Walking, biking, and transit use are all going up dramatically, and that's not social engineering. That's a reflection of changing tastes. And I think it's a lot as to what it means to be connected. Those of us who are old enough remember 16, you got your driver's license, that's how you got connected. Now it's 12 or 13 and they're connecting to their cell phones and texting. And the younger generation doesn't want to put that down, and transit gives them that opportunity to be connected. And walkable neighborhoods and bicycling gives them a chance to be connected. And coffee shops and arts and cultural institutions and historic places give them a chance to connect to their neighborhoods. So the whole definition of connectivity has changed, and cities, which are the premier places for people to connect, are where people want to be. And we're seeing that dramatic change. So how do we catch up to that? I think the other, so that's the good news. The hard news is, how do we realign our spending? And the roads and transit ballot measure was an example of the difficulty there. So in Seattle, we have done our own transit master plan. If the map were up, Seattle extends almost as far as Lake Washington to the north and almost as far to the south. We are a large player in the region, but far from the dominant player. We do not, control a majority on the King County Council, which controls the metro system, nor on the Sound Transit Board, which is the regional board that finances rail. So the state retains a strong taste for building highways at the expense of transit. In fact, our metro system is facing cuts unless there's an agreement to build more rural highways. And that's a current deadlock in the legislature. The region, is supportive of expanding transit, but they want to make sure it reaches to Tacoma and Everett. And as we look at that map, our question in Seattle is, how do we fill in connecting dense neighborhoods to each other in Seattle with neighborhood-to-neighborhood connections? And the county, of course, has to connect the whole county, and they've been a tremendous partner. at making sure we get the best possible bus service in Seattle. But I mention all of that because those are the places where the dollar flows come for rail and transit right now. So in Seattle, we are venturing into the business of rail. There's a streetcar that goes from downtown into South Lake Union. We're building one with the help of Sound Transit Financing and their support to go from Pioneer Square up to Capitol Hill and First Hill, which is where we have many hospitals located. Now we want to connect that, and we want to start creating a neighborhood-to-neighborhood rail network to connect our dense neighborhoods to each other. So something that's in between the light rail system and the intercity rail system, but a neighborhood-to-neighborhood system. And we also have the good fortune of having a company here that is fabricating the streetcars that we'll use. So if any of you were planning streetcars, we got a company here that can fabricate it, and we'd like to build streetcars for you just like we build airplanes and ships for the rest of the world. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you for listening to the story of Seattle. Just to orient you a little bit, really enjoy our city. The people here love this city. They put a lot of time and effort into making it a great place. And please explore all our neighborhoods and have a great time here. And go on back and keep pushing for more rail. It is the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor McGinn. Just a side story, when he talked about being opposed to the roads and transit ballot measure back in 2007, I had the not very fun duty one time of debating him on that topic, during that election, and he's an attorney, so there you go. I'm not. Okay. They're trained differently. Thank you, Mayor. So next, I'm really pleased to introduce King County Executive Dow Constantine. Dow also is a member of the Sound Transit Board, so we work together a lot. He's a three-time very proud Husky, three-time University of Washington alumnus, and previously served on the King County Council for 8 years and in the Washington State Senate and House of Representatives. He is just finishing his first term. He was elected in November of 2009. Throughout his public service career, Dow's been an outspoken advocate for environmental protection, public transit, and government reform. And as the mayor just said, he's currently leading the charge to ensure stable funding for King County Metro Transit, which is really important in our region, and for the roads within King County for the 39 cities. So it's a big effort going on right now currently in our region. Please join me in welcoming King County Executive Dow Constantine.
Thank you, Joni. Now, when Joni was talking about my school affiliation, you might have detected a slight eye roll. That's because she's a Washington State University Cougar, and they are a cross-state rival, and you know, the ribbing never ends in the Sound Transit conference room. Good morning, and welcome to our part of the country. So what makes Puget Sound, what makes our region different from other parts of the country? Well, as the mayor pointed out, for a long time, the answer to that question was, we don't have light rail. That's right. The Puget Sound region was late for the railvolution. But it's pretty serious omission for an otherwise innovative region. There are a lot of things we do have that others don't. This is the birthplace of commercial aviation. And the Boeing company makes the world's most popular commercial airliner, the 737, right here in King County. We didn't invent coffee, but Starbucks figured out how to build one store for every 250 people on the planet, and even how to dominate an intersection with stores on each corner. We didn't invent computers, but two geeks in a garage started Microsoft and put a PC in every home. We didn't invent online retailing, but Amazon.com proved that you can buy stuff you don't need 24 hours a day without ever getting out of your pajamas. And speaking of stuff you don't need, Costco successfully made the case that every respectable pantry needs a 5-gallon bucket of ketchup. These are our contributions to culture. So people may watch from afar and wonder, what's in the water out there? Innovation in business seems to happen quite naturally out here, in the rainforest. Workers in the modern innovation industries, high technology, clean energy, life sciences, are coming here by the thousands from around the world every year. Our popularity as a place to live and work means that we are especially well positioned to take advantage of the opportunities created by the new global economy. Globalization has made metropolitan economic regions like ours relevant in a new way. Talent, ideas, energy. They're transferable around the world, and people congregate in nodes like Central Puget Sound, and then they create together. This is a very different economy than the one we knew 50 or 100 years ago. We built our region on a foundation of bountiful natural resources, a deep water port, miles of forests, rivers full of fish, and natural beauty, the same beauty that still draws people here today. Our innovation economy is driven today by ideas, and especially by, sorry, Joni, the presence of a great research university, the University of Washington. You knew I had to get that in there, right? Yes, okay. The ideas just seem to flow down East Lake Avenue to the life sciences companies in South Lake Union. And it's not just the UW. There's that other university, and also we have a lot of public and private partners. Northeastern University, a private research institution headquartered in Boston, just opened a new branch in that same South Lake Union neighborhood of downtown Seattle, citing the alignment between its research focus and our economic priorities. Our innovation economy is driven by regional clusters of industries, such as the hundreds of aerospace companies that blossomed around Boeing's factories. Nearly 1/3 of Washington's aerospace companies make their home here in King County. That's roughly 47,000 engineers, machinists, and other aerospace workers, and many more in our neighboring counties. We're also part of this larger metropolitan region. Not to be outdone, information technology employs 145,000 people in such fields as enterprise software, interactive media, and cybersecurity. In fact, with some 300 companies, GeekWire recently referred to the Seattle region as the epicenter of the gaming industry in the US. It is truly shocking that we get any work done at all. So our strengths as a region are undeniable. And our status as a hotbed of innovation is one that we are, I think, justly proud of. In fact, as those of you who went to the museum may have seen last night, our Museum of History and Industry just opened the new Bezos Center for Innovation to highlight and promote our region's strong innovative culture. But, as has been alluded to today, as a region, we have not always made the right decisions. As I said, we had a chance to build our first rail line in the last century. This map is from an article about rail transit in the Seattle Times from 1965, when I was 3 and thus not registered to vote, much to my chagrin. It shows a light rail corridor between Seattle and Northgate, and from Seattle to downtown Bellevue, both lines to be finished in 20 years in the futuristic year of 1985. It's funny to look at now, and it's a little sad. We had the need, we had the plan, we had an insanely generous federal funding package, even for its time. But instead of seizing the opportunity, we simply wussed out. It's kind of like we overslept for 40 years. Now, if anyone is here from Atlanta, you're welcome. Atlanta in the house, there you go. As the mayor said, you got to build MARTA because we were too stupid to take the money. We finally woke up in 1996 and got started and opened the first segment of Sound Transit's Link Light Rail Line in 2009 when I was 47. Now it's up to our generation to complete Sound Transit's Link Light Rail line, the infrastructure project for this century. Light rail is the framework upon which the future of our region will be built. We already run one of the nation's busiest bus systems. King County is the operator of Metro Transit, which carries almost 120 million riders a year, perhaps because we were late to the rail party. But again, we missed the opportunity over 40 years to transform major station hubs with transit-oriented development. We have some 4.2 million people in this Puget Sound region, in the central Puget Sound. Mr. Mayor, I think the city of Seattle is about 680, is that right? 680,000. There are 4.2 million of us who are really part of this big economic entity, this big social entity of central Puget Sound, who need to get where they want to go, to jobs and to school and shopping and healthcare. 1 million more are expected to join us over the next couple of decades. At the same time, our region's businesses keep growing. Amazon is building over 3 million square feet of office space in the next few years, basically right across the street from this hotel. Microsoft is expanding outside of its urban campus in Redmond to office space in downtown Seattle and downtown Bellevue in order to attract young urban talent. Reliable public transportation is essential to keeping these businesses here and attracting new ones to the region. As you know, the transportation we build today determines the land use we will live with tomorrow. Proximity to light rail will guide the siting of new housing and new healthcare facilities, new schools, and the development of compact, walkable neighborhoods. Last year, I teamed with some like-minded folks on the Sound Transit Board to update the agency's TOD policy to sharpen our focus on the communities we build around our light rail stations. One thing we do need is a change in state law to help us develop the financing to incubate small transit-oriented development as we build. A decision we did get right over the past decades was making the hard and correct decisions on growth management. In Western Washington, the early settlers gravitated to the waters of Puget Sound, and the land to the east was more naturally maintained as farmlands and forests leading up to the Cascade Mountains. Almost 25 years ago, to prevent the kind of sprawl seen in other parts of the country, the state enacted far-reaching growth management legislation, and we drew an urban growth boundary, a bright green line right down the middle of this county. As a county, we have rejected ex-urban sprawl and protected farms and forests that drew us here in the first place. But the other half of the growth management equation is that we are creating new, vibrant, walkable communities in our urban areas with great transit that are attracting people inward. No longer must growth simply be forced into urban communities. People now want to live here downtown. They want to live in South Lake Union and our other urban centers. They want to live in downtown Bellevue, which some of you may see later today. Great public spaces act as a magnet to attract more people close to rail, close to bus, close to jobs and shopping. What the Railvolution gives us is the ability to change the direction of our growth, not just holding the line, but reversing the migration back toward the urban core. So, transit is not just the spine of our regional transportation system, it is the backbone of our economy. Just as the generation of our parents and grandparents built floating bridges and created the 1962 World's Fair and cleaned up sewage-ravaged Lake Washington, light rail will be our bold initiative, our game changer. We may be late to the party, but we're getting a chance to do it right. We're not going to let this Railvolution happen without us. Hosting the Railvolution Conference here in King County is a great opportunity for us to power up the discussion around our possibilities for the future. Railvolution shows us, it allows us to reflect on how far we've come and we don't mind stealing some of your good ideas based on the smart things that you are doing. So welcome, and thank you, and enjoy the conference and everything our region has to offer. And if you don't, call me and let me know, and I'll make sure you have fun. Thanks.
Can you see why I like my job? Look at the people I get to work with. It's just wonderful. I notice there's a lot of people standing around the corners. There's lots of seats still around here. If you guys want to come up, there's lots of seats in front. So now, with that great kickoff from our local leaders, our next person up is someone that really needs no introduction, especially to this group and this audience. Elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1996, Congressman Blumenauer is Congress's chief spokesperson for livable communities. Visiting more than 200 communities across the country, he's worked with local governments, citizens, and civic organizations to strengthen local efforts to manage growth, provide transportation options, and foster sustainable economic growth. Congressman Blumenauer founded the Livable Communities Task Force, the Bicycle Caucus, and several other caucuses. He is co-chair of the Passenger Rail Caucus and the Trails Caucus, and a member of the Open Spaces and Land Trust Caucuses. How do you keep them all straight, sir? In 1991, he founded Portland's Regional Rail Summit, which evolved into the National Railvolution Conference in 1995. He is definitely one of our largest and biggest supporters and champions in this country. Please give a warm welcome to Congressman Earl Blumenauer.
Thank you, Joni. You know, everything the mayor, county executive said is absolutely true. This is a spectacular place to be. We welcome you to Portland's big sister. It's a place where there is more technology, more industry. There's that huge university. I think it has a football team. I sometimes get confused. The weather is better here. In fact, one of the things we try and make clear to people that enjoy Portland, think about, but if you want to see the real deal, just keep moving north, Californians, to Puget Sound, where it all happens. I can't tell you how pleased I am to be here. I really can't tell you how pleased I am to be here. It was a strange month in Washington, D.C. I feel like I need to personally call 317 million Americans to apologize, and you just saved me 1,200 phone calls. And you have to wonder at some point what people thought about that. I wonder what normal people, if they noticed it, what they were thinking, how it worked. I think at some level it bit a little deeper than some of my colleagues expected. And I'm still hearing stories about the impact, about the disruption, about what people were concerned about. How many federal employees are here? Come on, I know, come. I just want to express my appreciation. I think we all should express our appreciation to the men and women who, under difficult circumstances, are working for us in some of the most thankless tasks. Under-resourced, underappreciated, sometimes, I mean, I can't even explain the furlough operation, but people who have been playing a vital role in our effort for livable communities. We wouldn't be here where we are without some of the folks that you never see who are in EPA, who are in FTA, who are out there in HUD. who sometimes work very creatively with us to figure out how to work around the rules and regulations to get what the desired outcomes really were. And that is important, and that is something that I deeply appreciate. And I'm hopeful that the fever has broken. I'm hopeful that the 3-month truce continues on and that we get down to cases, because the issue is all about what kind of America we want. And I think there's more consensus about that. What does an aging, growing, dynamic nation with high expectations, but too often, shall we say, low performance, how do we provide the energy, the vision, the follow-through to give Americans what they need, want, and deserve? There's a Tea Party factor, but you know about this. A number of you were contending with the Tea Party before there was a Tea Party. Prop 13 in California. You've had some experience here in the state of Washington with curious policies, even in deep blue progressive Washington, because these are deeply held beliefs, and there are frustrations that need to be worked out. We should welcome the opportunity to reassess the federal role and its relationship with us at the state and local level to figure out how to provide livable communities. That is what started Railvolution in the first instance, and my sense was, how could we use that federal partnership to grow our light rail line into a system? And bringing people together, not just to talk about the lines and the vehicles, but what's outside the window. Building a vision of a city like Seattle, where young people want to go and their parents and grandparents want to live. And Seattle really is the perfect location. And I was struck by the map from the 60s. I got started in this business as a child member of the National Civic League and met Jim Ellis, who was part of that forward thrust. And it was, to be fair to Seattle, it required a supermajority. And you had a very strong vote that most of America would have welcomed, but it wasn't quite enough. But you've made up for lost time, to be sure. And it stuns me, and I had a chance to work with a number of King County executives, with mayors, visiting over the years in Portland and in Congress to try and get on track and moving the rail agenda. And it's stunning to me that it's only been 2009. You look at the progress. Well, today, the challenges are much greater than what Jim Ellis and those pioneers were looking at 50 years ago. Then it was sprawl, urban decline, air pollution, water pollution. How quaint. Because now we're dealing with the challenges of economic prosperity in a global economy. We're talking about the threat to the planet of climate change and the development of political technology. Maybe some of these certified smart people here in Puget Sound ought to be held accountable for the precision with which politicians can now select their voters instead of voters selecting the politicians with gerrymandering. This is extraordinarily different today, even than when I was starting this effort 25 years ago. And we continue to be victims of geography and sort of human instinct, as we have this drive of more and more people who insist on living up in the urban-rural interface, in the flame zone, or people continue to migrate to coastal areas. Well, How are we going to succeed in this effort without a reliable federal partner? I don't think we will. I don't think we will. And part of what I think our challenge is today is to translate the exciting things that are going on in Puget Sound and for all of you around the country. Translate that on the federal level to help people in the National Congress, in this administration and the next administration, to understand the stakes and the opportunities really. Not talk about it, not nod, not show up occasionally at a conference or welcome you to their office, but really deep into the bones. Be able to understand that this is their challenge and their struggle, and making that partnership more effective is everybody's job. Part of it has to do with money. Let's acknowledge it. Let's deal with it. We are, and I've been serving on the Budget Committee for the last 8 years, and have been really frustrated that we've been unable to get people to zero in on areas where there's actual agreement. Paul Ryan and I were on the floor last week dealing with reforms to agricultural spending, so that less money goes to super rich agribusiness and more of it is used on the ground for farmers and ranchers dealing with healthy food and protecting the environment. We can do this. But the budget that the House is operating on is a 10-year glide path back to funding levels before Jim Ellis dealt with forward thrust. 1962 spending levels? Really? Back when we had 140 million fewer people, 1/3 the number of senior citizens? And that's before sequestration cuts kick in. Sequestration. Proof that if you're absolutely bound and determined to design horrible policy, you can do it. We need your help to be able to connect people in Congress with the reality of the budget. It was fascinating to me that some of the folks that ran out of the Capitol early in the morning, October 1st, celebrating the fact that they had shut down the federal government, within a matter of days were trying to, on a piecemeal basis, reopen it. They found 20% that they liked, including the Park Service, or part of the Park Service. The same Park Service that has lost 13% of its funding in 3 years, lost 1,900 positions and $100 million just in this year's budget. We can't afford theoretical budgets. We need to make it real. The Transportation HUD Appropriations Bill is still in limbo. It was being debated last summer when all of a sudden they figured out in the House of Representatives that there weren't votes to pass it. And we haven't moved another spending bill since. Now, I think it's great that there is finally a conference committee. After 6 months, there's going to be a conference committee between the House and the Senate. And people in the state of Washington, I can't thank you enough for Senator Patty Murray. That mom in tennis shoes is in those meetings with combat boots. She's tough, she's purposeful. It's a delight to work with her. It's fun to watch her in action. What we need to do is to move from the theoretical to the practical. Have people held accountable for those budgets, and if they can't pass, that's a signal. Well, there are things that we need to do. We have to acknowledge that the federal role in transportation is very important. What does it buy? Much of what you are marveling about here today in the Puget Sound area, and much of what you're proud about and are highlighting in the course of this conference would not have been possible without the funding, the innovation, the flexibility, the incentive of the ICE-T legislation. Thank you, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, of 1991. The federal investment has helped with innovation and sometimes a green light that would have been hard on our own. I'll tell you, without the federal investment, we wouldn't have had Portland's first light rail line. We wouldn't have come as close as you did in Seattle with Forward Thrust. But once it was there, facts on the ground, it took hold. It blossomed. It's made a great deal of difference. The federal partnership helps fund that innovation. Some parts of the country are dealing with things on a regional basis, on a bi-state basis. And federal funding helps fill in those gaps. We've got some parts of the country that are richer than other parts of the country. We look in awe at Puget Sound. I mean, you reach the point where maybe you don't need federal money anymore. I don't know. Although you're probably due something for the MARTA trade-off. I'll grant you that. But lots of the country does need help. And sometimes they need help on a temporary basis because of local economic circumstances or natural disasters. There's a need for that federal role. Last but not least, we need some national systems. Amazon.com relies on a distribution system that needs healthy air, truck transport around the country. We are united, we're integrated, and we need national systems that business and families can rely on. Well, we need to make that point. And we also need to acknowledge that there are areas for greater savings. We haven't squeezed all the fat out of the federal government by any stretch of the imagination. But it's hard because of some of the political forces and the inertia and goofy things like sequestration to be able to zero in on where that laser focus needs to be directed. Does anybody think that we need to spend 2/3 of $1 trillion on nuclear weapons that we haven't used in 65 years, that don't help us in Afghanistan or Syria? And if you read Eric Schlosser's new book, they are flipping dangerous. You know, dropping them in North Carolina, losing track of them. 2/3 of $1 trillion. Even if you are the most ardent believer in the theory of deterrence, and who is it exactly that we're going to deter, we don't need but a fraction of what we have. And we don't need 3 separate, redundant delivery systems. 2/3 of $1 trillion. That's what they're arguing about. Any group of high school economics and physics students can come up with a plan to take $500 billion out of that. Reform crop insurance before you slash food stamps. Don't take it out on the poorest Americans. Large agribusiness can get along quite well, thank you very much. And we'll be able to help more farmers and ranchers with research and marketing and environmental protection, and maybe subsidizing a little healthy food in our schools, farmers' markets. There's a reason, my friend Michael Pollan points out, that a bunch of carrots costs more than a bag of Twinkies. We can save billions and help strengthen the agricultural sector. And no matter what your view is on health care or Obamacare, we haven't begun to finish the job of giving Americans better value for their health care dollar. We don't need to spend twice as much as other rich countries for what, and some people have the finest health care in the world, and that's another of the big draws here in Seattle. But for most Americans, that's not the case. And Americans overall get sick more often, they take longer to get well, they die sooner than old Europe. And we're starting to see renovation and reform in that sector. But if we can bring our health care costs down to what, those socialists in Canada spend for better results, there is no budget deficit. None. Nada. I think the national debate about health care is important, and we're having sort of a controlled experiment. 1/3 of the country is implementing the Affordable Care Act, and the state of Washington is doing a great job. I had a bike ride and lunch with Governor Inslee yesterday, and just, you know, you've dove in, you're making it work. In Oregon, even though we are having a little bit of a hiccup with our electronic process, we've already enrolled over 56,000 people in Medicaid, eliminating 10% of our uninsured population. 1/3 of America is saying no. In fact, they've refused to accept the Medicaid money, leaving 6 million Americans, ironically, who will be too poor to qualify for health care. Well, over the next couple years, we'll see which approach works best. But we've got opportunities to move this forward. And this is where you come in. This is where I am pleased to be here, where I'm excited about what I see, is that you are dealing with an area that actually is much less controversial, although it may not seem to you occasionally in some of those meetings, but it's not nearly as controversial and as volatile and face the organized, entrenched interests like we see in defense spending and health care and big ag. This is an area, because of your hard work and the results on the ground, where people can see that it makes a difference. It's why 17 states have been able to increase the gas tax when we're still stuck on the federal level. It's why local initiative after local initiative is passing, because of the proof of what you're doing. And I'm tempted to just start naming names. I won't, because I'd leave somebody out. I went through the list of conferees and just scrolling back in my mind, meetings that I had debating Valtrans in Phoenix 25 years ago, and watching now today, light rail. I think I got John Pingree, the general manager of Utah Transit, fired when he invited me to come to Salt Lake City to talk about light rail back in the day. And look what's happened in Salt Lake. Washington, D.C., when I first went to Congress, was charitably a basket case. And now it's the fastest growing state in the country, with the bike share, streetcar, the development in terms of what's happening downtown. But it goes, I'll stop because I'm running short of time. You've got an important program. But suffice it to say, you're part of a really powerful, fundamental story. We need your help to be able to make sure that any grand fiscal bargain includes the infrastructure deficit. And there is a broad bipartisan coalition, a nonpartisan coalition, that is in support of taking steps to correct that problem. We have over 300 stakeholders that meet with me in Washington, D.C., everybody from the Sierra Club to the Garden Club, the U.S. Chamber, AFL-CIO, ready to support Congress if it steps up on infrastructure investment. It was part of Simpson-Bowles. It was part of the Clinton, that was the last gas tax, was the Clinton budget. I remind my colleagues on Senate Finance and Ways and Means that even Ronald Reagan supported a nickel a gallon gas tax back in 1982 when a nickel a gallon was real money. It's a different category. So we need to work together to increase the gas tax now and index it. But I want you to work with me because that's not good enough. Because the gas tax is in a downward spiral. Funding transportation based on gallons of fuel consumed ain't gonna work. We need to move to a vehicle mile traveled fee. Oregon gave you the first gas tax dedicated to highway construction 94 years ago, and for the last 10 years we've been working on an experiment to get rid of the gas tax. The vehicle mile traveled fee is something that is more than just an accounting device to be able to collect money, although it is that. But this represents an opportunity for us to change the platform for the transportation experience. Now, we don't want to know where you go, although anybody with one of these, the man knows, right? Right? But we've got a system that we've been pioneering in Oregon where you can pick the way to keep track of the miles. But that same technology can transform the vehicle into an amazingly powerful platform for transportation. It will be able to pay for tolls, to be able to pay for transit, be able to pay for parking, and tell you where a vacant parking space is. There's an opportunity for us to give real-time traffic information and to adjust the payment so that we can moderate the flow. We want you to work with us on this vehicle mile traveled fee to be able to transform how we pay for transportation in the future. And last but not least, we want you to work with us to be able to redesign that federal working relationship. We ought to make it easier. I joked for a while earlier about sometimes federal people have to help us figure out how to get around arbitrary and actually counterproductive rules. But we need to make sure that somebody who wants a $20 million grant for an urban circulator isn't figuring out, well, is it going to cost us more to get a small grant than it's worth? And I think you know some ways that we can adjust that, and the people in the federal government want to do that as well. I thank you for being here, for being a part of this. I want to thank Dan for what the Railvolution team has done, not just putting on a great conference, but connecting people, thinking about how we work forward, how we don't just move to Minneapolis next year for another knockout conference, but along the way, share that experience with one another, how we build the brand, we strengthen the working relationships, and get the policies we need. I think this conference is off to a great start. I look forward to meeting with you, celebrating your successes. This is the record-breaking conference. We've got people from over 200 communities, 4 foreign countries. We hope that you are able to get the most out of it and tell us how we can help you do even better. Thank you very much.
We are so lucky to have a leader in Congressman Blumenauer in this country helping us get that other Washington straightened out. Thank you so much for your leadership, Congressman. We really appreciate it. So our last speaker this morning, and I'll be last because I'm going to come up after her to make a few comments. But our last speaker today is someone that we know and whose energy is quite contagious. It's wonderful to introduce my colleague today, Dr. Beverly Scott, General Manager of the Massachusetts, just wait a second, Beverly, I get to do that to her, of the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority and President of the Railvolution Board of Directors. Dr. Scott is responsible for managing the MBTA, just a small little job in our country, and overseeing the Commonwealth's 15 regional transit authorities and MassDOT's freight and passenger rail programs. Beverly's career includes senior leadership positions with some of the nation's largest public transit systems. She was the first female CEO, general manager of that system in Atlanta that took Seattle's money you've been hearing about in MARTA. Beverly was recently named a Transportation Innovator of Change by President Obama and the U.S. Department of Transportation, and is vice chair of the National Infrastructure Advisory Council, a presidential appointment. She holds a doctorate in political science from Howard University and a BA in political science from Fisk University. Beverly, come on up.
Oh, Joni, I tell you, it's so much fun. Good morning. How's everybody this morning? Good. Well, it's a great pleasure and an absolute honor to follow our tremendous local leaders and Railvolution's extraordinary founder, Earl Blumenauer. He's a true visionary leader whose passion, commitment, and energy continue to inspire us all. And Earl, from all of us, a very sincere thank you for continuing to light the way and to fight the good fight. Today, after close to 20 years, as we open this year's annual meeting in Seattle, a gateway to the beautiful Puget Sound region, we are sitting here close to 1,400 strong. Individuals from all walks of life, roots, tops, electeds, advocates, neighbors, business, and community leaders, partner institutions, public, private, and not-for-profit sectors, all equals, representing hundreds of neighborhoods, communities, and regions throughout the United States and the Americas, including a number of international guests. A truly organic network of committed people and institutions, us, Railvolution's greatest asset. Simply and powerfully, ordinary people connected by a passion about transforming and building livable cities and regions that are healthy, economically vibrant, socially equitable, and environmentally sustainable. And as importantly, where all people have quality and affordable transportation choices that make it possible for them to access and participate in life's opportunities. Ordinary people representing a growing movement across America, all here to share ideas, breakthroughs, frustrations, lessons learned from real-world, not textbook experiences, and most importantly, who share a genuine passion, inspiration, and commitment to make a difference. Last year, as part of an intensive strategic planning process, many of you, over 100, many of you are here today, who directly participated in focus group discussions about the future of Railvolution. Many thanks to all of you who individually participated, and to all of our core partners represented on the National Steering Committee and our board members. Couldn't do it without you. The overwhelming result of our year-long strategic planning process has been a resounding reaffirmation of our foundation. Bottom line, this is an absolutely exciting and extraordinary time to be a part of Railvolution. In a nutshell, you told us that you want more. More and deeper content, to become a true learning network, not to be an end-all be-all, but a true learning network. More opportunities for substantive engagement, more help to build capacity for local, regional, and national leadership, more data and information to help make the case for livable communities, and to make it a major signature element of our strategic plan to help build and support the next generation of leadership. Always encouraging people and organizations to cooperatively share resources and leverage the good work. We hear you, and as a result, we have taken a very bold step, developing a new vision, mission, values, and strategic plan that calls on all of us to be a learning network and a resource hub more than an annual conference. By working with each of you together, our tremendous network of community-based public and private partners to help equip and connect people and institutions at all levels. So as we kick off this year's exciting annual meeting, to sum it up, all of us have choices. We can either borrow from the future or invest in it. For all of us here today, thank you for the decision to roll up your shirt sleeves to make our communities great places to live for everyone. So now let's have a great annual meeting, and back to Joni.
Thank you, Beverly. Great energy for this conference. Thanks for your time this morning. So as you just heard the vision of what the Railvolution board's been talking about, there's more opportunities, more networking opportunities throughout the conference, more opportunities for engagement and interaction and excitement. So we're trying a variety of session formats, idea exchange sessions, and if you haven't been yet, tomorrow night, I believe it is, and I'll see if I can say it right, we have the Pecha Kucha Slam, and that is not to be missed. There's more social media and communications, thanks to Parsons Brinkerhoff, who has sponsored the Railvolution mobile app. Please tweet at #Railvolution, Railvolution one word. And then there's two opportunities to add your voice as we go forward, called Raise the Bar and Raise the Roof feedback sessions for helping us plan sessions going forward, Monday at noon and Wednesday at 2 o'clock. So we have 3 full days in front of us of great workshops. The success of Railvolution comes from your engagement, you really asking the tough questions in the sessions and attending the sessions. So we're excited about that. So following this morning's plenary session, we have an all-important coffee break. You've been sitting here a long time. In the trade show next door, the morning workshops begin at 10 o'clock, and at the close of the morning workshops, please pick up your box lunch in the trade show and take it to whatever opportunity you want to at lunchtime. There's many opportunities for networking. And don't miss a chance to check out the bookstore near the registration desk. So as we close, please give another round of applause to our speakers this morning. They were a great start. And I want to go back to something Beverly said, because she didn't really put a fine point on it. We are over 1,400. This is a new record of attendance for Railvolution, so we're very excited about that. So on behalf of the Executive Host Committee, again, welcome to Seattle. Enjoy your 3 days and let us know if there's anything more we can do for you. Thank you.